Hare Krishna, Vraj, Vihari, Prabhu, Dandot Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Nice to see you all. Very good. So we'll start in a minute.
Yes, Prabhu.
Well, we can start. It's 5:30. Om Ajnanatamandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Datati Swapatantikam Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivas Adhigora Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we will begin the 9th chapter of the Nectar of Devotion.
Prabhu, last week we did not finish that the offenses of chanting against the holy name, I remember.
Yeah, so if there's time, we'll go back to that. Okay. How far did we get? Did we cover some of them? Anyone remember?
We have to start.
Pardon me?
Yeah, we did cover a bit, Prabhu.
Only the holy names offenses against the holy name, only we did not cover, Prabhu. The rest we covered.
We didn't go through the actual 10 offenses.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes.
Okay, so let's do that if there's time this time. Otherwise, we will do it when there's a shorter chapter. This is kind of a long chapter, but we will definitely do it. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. This is a pretty long chapter. Let's see how we do. So we're going on with the 64 items of bhakti. And the first one is about blasphemy. And, you know, it's very interesting. Prabhupada says that generally a devotee is meek and humble, but if someone is offensive to Krishna or to Krishna's devotees, then he has to do something. He or she has to do something. And we don't suggest the giving up of one's life. We do suggest the other two, that either defeating the person in argument or leaving that place or changing the topic, you know, because sometimes it's with devotees that people are, you know, another devotee is being offensive. So sometimes it's just, you know, somehow let's talk about the wonderful prasadam they had last Sunday, you know, just change the subject from whatever it is. But the idea is that the principle is that we want to protect ourselves from hearing things that can hurt our bhakti lata, the plant, the creeper of bhakti. And these things, they sometimes can create doubts. They can sometimes also just that we, you know, association is so powerful that, and that's why one time when Lord Chaitanya was asked, how can you judge who's a Vaishnava? And he said, asat sanga tyag, a Vaishnavachar, that immediately he'll not associate He'll tiag, he'll renounce the association of asat. People who are not fixed on the eternal. So we want to, and in our own lives, this is when someone else blasphemes, but in our own lives, we want to be so careful about, we've talked about this, I know, a number of times, but you can't talk about it, you can't emphasize it enough, because Krishna loves his devotees. So we all know what happens if you offend someone that somebody loves, right? So if we offend a devotee of Krishna's and Krishna loves that person, Krishna's going to be upset with us, and we're not going to make spiritual advancement. So we really want to what's the word? Be very fixed in our consciousness, etched in our consciousness, this principle that we may say, I don't agree with this Prabhu about something, or this Mataji, I have a different opinion, I see things differently, or he really made a major mistake here. But I remember that he or she is chanting Hare Krishna and is a devotee. So we don't just put our head in the sand and make believe that everything everybody does is perfect, but we balance whatever friction might be, or whatever doubts might be, or whatever imperfections might be, with the fact that they are chanting Hare Krishna, they are devotees. In the fourth canto, Srila Prabhupada writes that, and this is interesting, it connects this and the next point about tilak. As indicated in Bhagavad Gita, whenever we find someone extraordinary preaching the bhakti cult, we should know that he is especially empowered by Lord Vishnu or Lord Krishna, as confirmed in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna Shakti Vina Nahe Tara Pravartana. One cannot explain the glories of the holy name of the Lord without being specifically empowered by him. If one criticizes or finds fault with such an empowered personality, one is to be considered an offender against Lord Vishnu and is punishable. Even though such offenders may dress as Vaishnavas with false tilak and mala, they are never forgiven by the Lord if they offend a pure Vaishnava. There are many instances of this in Shastra. So we want to be careful. And let me ask, Rasa Sindhu Prabhu, you know many of the devotees here in the class. So tell me, who's one of the very intelligent ones?
All of them except me, Prabhu.
Very tricky person. All right. All right, I'm going to ask Pranavala Prabhu. So please tell me, do we have, excluding myself, we have 35 devotees on the call right now. So please, from most advanced to least advanced, please list the 35 devotees. Go ahead.
Sindhu Prabhu gave a clue, Prabhu. Everybody is advanced devotee except me.
So the point is, it's very hard to know. And so therefore, the safe thing is just don't offend any devotee. Because we don't want to get into the mentality, oh, I can offend so-and-so because they're not very advanced. We don't know what their relationship is like with Krishna. So therefore, the general principle is don't offend anyone. And then you'll be amazed at how your consciousness is clear, how you feel closer to Krishna. And especially if you enter, instead of, that's just a negative, don't blaspheme. The positive, serve them. You'll be amazed at how easy Krishna consciousness is. Very easy. And so that, again, it doesn't mean that we don't make mistakes and we have to decide things, especially if we're in management. But we keep that balance always, that this person is chanting Hare Krishna. So then, tilak and tulsi beads. And Prabhupada talks about the Padma Purana, that devout Vaishnavas should mark the 12 places in their body with tilak, remembering that this body is a temple and the soul is the deity inside the temple, you could say, the super soul, rather. And he quotes this that, and who have Vishnu tilak on their foreheads are to be understood as the devotees of Lord Vishnu in this world. So it's an important principle. Prabhupada told Peter Burwash, who was I think I mentioned his name before, a devotee businessman. He told him that if you're going out to do business and you can't wear tilak, then use water tilak and just put water on the 12 places in your body. So we should always be wearing tilak before we leave the house, whether it's visible or not visible. It's very easy. It only takes 30 seconds to put on water tilak. But you can do that if you're going to office and you may not be able to, it's not appropriate. It may or may not be appropriate. And there's many statements by Prabhupada. Every devotee, this is in the 4th canto, every devotee should take his bath early in the morning and decorate his body with tilak. In Kali Yuga, one can hardly acquire gold or jeweled ornaments, but the 12 tilak marks on the body are sufficient as auspicious decorations to purify the body. So any men here who are a little cheap, don't like to spend money, so next time your wife asks you for gold, you can quote this, where it says, in Kali Yuga, one can hardly acquire gold or jeweled ornaments, but the 12 tilak marks are sufficient. So you can just buy them some tilak, save a lot of money. I wish I had read this purport 30 years ago. Another one from the 11th canto, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur has pointed out that although one may mark the body with sacred tilak, perform mudras and chant mantras, if one is thinking within his mind of material sense gratification, his worship of Lord Sri Hari is bogus. So this is the balance. And there's a lot of quotes like this because the tilak is an external visible thing, right? And so we want to be careful to, not just have the signs of a devotee, but we also have the heart of a devotee. And that's true about a lot of these 64 items, right? That they are, if you remember, Sarva Vidhi Nishedhashur Etayar Eva Kinkara, they're servants of the basic principles of remembering Krishna, of being Trinada Pisunichena, etc., etc. Yes. So let me see. I think I had one or two other quotes. Prabhupada writes, after initiation, this is from Madhya Lila of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. After initiation, the disciple's name must be changed to indicate he is a servant of Lord Vishnu. The disciple should also immediately begin marking his body with tilak, especially his, and this is interesting, especially his forehead. So that might indicate that if you don't have time or you're in a rush or something like that, at least make sure you have it on your forehead, because he says here, especially the forehead. And then another one from Madhya Lila, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then marked his body with tilak made from the mud of Radhakund. And with the help of Balabhadra Bhattacharya, he collected some of the mud and took it with him. And then Madhya Lila again, when putting the 12 tilak marks on the 12 places of the body, one has to chant the mantra consisting of these 12 Vishnu names. Also, when one anoints the different parts of the body with water, these names should be chanted as one touches each part of the body. And the verse is Lalate Keshavam Dhyayan Narayan Athodara Vakshe Stahale Maravam Tu Govindam Kantaku Pakte Vishnum Cha Dakshide Kuksao Aho cha Madhusudanam, Trivikram Kandare tu, Vamana Vama Parkshvake, Sridharam Vama Bahotu, Rishikesham tu Kandare, Pristecha Padmanabham cha, Katyam Damadara Nyaset. That mentions the 12 parts of the body. Okay. Any questions about blasphemy or about tilak? And then also it says Kuntimala, wearing tulsi neck beads.
Prabhu, regarding wearing the Kantimala, so the number of rounds that devotees wear 1 round, 3 rounds, and some devotees also wearing more rounds of Kantimala. And should it always be visibly worn, or it could be inside the garment that one is wearing as well, slightly longer?
Should it be visible?
Yeah, should it be, or is it okay if it is not visible? It's slightly longer than the neck.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I have, it's tight around the neck, but I wear a suit and tie sometimes for work. So, because of the tie, they can't see it. But are you saying you may purposely not want it visible?
Could be so, on occasions.
Yeah, sure. I think that's, I assume that's fine. Yeah. I mean, we see Bhaktivinoda Thakur, pictures of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I think some of the beads are very, yeah. Sure.
And so again, a combination of tilak and Kantimala. As you said, sometimes when we go to work, we could use a watermark, but let's say we still are able to wear a tilak with Gopi Chandan or.
That's very nice.
So, okay, but now if you're visiting, let's say for a meeting to a restaurant where meat is being served, or let's say you end up meeting up somebody in a bar or a pub or something like that, is it still appropriate to continue to wear it to be?
Maybe not, because maybe they didn't read the verse about if you see Lord Nityananda walking into the liquor store, you'll know that he's going there to preach. They may have missed that verse.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
I already informed you that I have been rendering service in the accounts department of the temple. Sometimes, Prabhu, I come across situations where I have to necessarily report a few things or discuss with the people. All devotees, they might have done something deliberately or not, or knowingly or unknowingly, wantonly or unwantonly, but their actions might have caused some loss to the temple. So I have to discuss with them, I have to chide them, or I have to report them. Such actions only in the interest of protecting the Krishna's money, but it may cause some hardship or some agony to those people, Prabhu. How to deal with such cases?
We have to do that. And that's also our service. You see, we just have to look into our own heart and make sure that we're only doing this because of service, not because I want to.
It will not amount to blasphemy, Prabhu.
No, it's not blasphemy. It's not blasphemy if you call a thief. It's not blasphemy, right? They actually are a thief. We can, sometimes be a little careful. We say, well, I'm sure, this person had, like I would say sometimes, I'm sure this person has many devotional qualities, but it also does look like he took 2 lakh rupees and used it for his personal use. And we obviously cannot allow that within our society. So, he has to, and then we might say he's got to pay back the 2 lakhs. He can't come to the temple for 6 months. He has to, do menial service, whatever. We have to deal with it practically, but we can still add that I'm sure, in his heart of hearts, he wants to serve Krishna. But unfortunately, this impurity has arisen and we have to deal with it. So something like that, because it's not, it's maybe exactly how Krishna sees it. Yes, this person made a stupid mistake. Yes, they're a thief. And I do know that Krishna says, I do know that he's really trying to love me. So we have that balance. Is that all right?
Okay. Okay.
Anything else?
Hare
There are
Krishna,
a couple
Prabhu.
of comments also.
What's that? And just give me about 20 seconds, all right? Hold on. So I just got sorry about that, but my Guru Maharaj Burijan Prabhu sent me a WhatsApp message, and I told them we're talking about Nectar Devotion in in Bangalore, and I said, would you like to join us? And he said he would, but it's too early in the morning where he is. He's in Australia. But he did want to offer his respects to all of you. He said he remembers visiting Bangalore and just how eager all the devotees, and he said also the children were to hear. So I don't know if some of you met him when he was there, but he was very gracious, very thankful to all of you. And he said, what did he say to me? He said, how wonderful. That's what he said. So I said, sorry, Guru Maharaj, I can't talk to you right now. I'm teaching a class in Bangalore. Brajeshwari Pran Mataji, please.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Dandavat Pranam. So regarding the blasphemy of devotees, even after knowing, it's easy. Sometimes we see the Vaishnavas, how they are instrumental to receive the mercy in our lives through Krishna, through other devotees. But sometimes, because the mind is not always the constant, and we tend to make mistakes, we tend to ignore sometimes. So how do we make constant endeavor not to make any offenses towards them?
Well, give me a second here. I think I've quoted this before to you from Srila Prabhupada. Let me find it. I'll put it in the chat, and then I'll also read it to you. Well, maybe it's sometimes if something is too big, they don't let you put it in the chat, I've noticed. I may have to do this in 2 parts. See if that works. Yeah. Because devotees are persons, therefore there will always be some lacking. But because the difference is that they're lacking because they have given up everything to serve Krishna, money, jobs, reputation, wealth, big educations, everything. Their lackings have become transcendental. Because despite everything they may do, their topmost intention is to serve Krishna. And then he quotes Bhagavad Gita, one who is engaged in devotional service despite the most abominable action is to be considered saintly because he is rightly situated. And let me quote the rest of it. If I can. The devotees of Krishna are the most exalted persons on this planet, better than kings, all of them. So we should always remember that. And like the bumblebee, always look for the nectar or the best qualities of a person, not like the utopians who are like the flies who always go to the open sores or find the faults in a person. And because they cannot find any utopia, or because they cannot find anyone without faults, they want to become void, merge, nothing. They think that is utopia, to become void of personality. So if there are sometimes slight disagreements between devotees, it is not due to impersonalism, but is because they are persons, and such disagreements should not be taken very seriously. So one thing, Brajeshwari Pan Mataji, is to maybe copy and paste this and, etch it into our mind. So that's on, so remember what Srila Prabhupada said. And then just, it's just like, it would be great if we could get into the habit, just like none of you, if somebody offered you a piece of meat or some fish, you would immediately, you wouldn't have to think about it for 10 minutes or find a Prabhupada quote, about not eating meat. You would just go, right? So we want to develop that consciousness towards speaking ill of other devotees. That it's almost like instantaneous or spontaneous. So that may take some work, but keeping in mind quotes like this, Prabhupada, especially the beginning of that second one, the devotees of Krishna are the most exalted persons on this planet, better than kings, all of them. Is that all right, Mataji? Okay, now I think there's some other things in the chat. So let's go there. Is there restrictions to wearing kantimala? Like shouldn't take onions, garlic, etc. I'm not sure about that. We used to, here in America sometimes, I remember we would sometimes set up book tables and have Harinam, and we would also sell neck beads because it was a really good way to help support the Sankirtan financially, because you know what it wouldn't be 3 times around, it'd be 1 time around, but what does that cost in India these days? I don't know, 20 rupees maybe? I don't know. And you could sell it for $5, which is about almost 400 rupees, right? So, 375 rupees or so. So huge profit, right? I'm looking at Navadip Sachi Mataji because she always strikes me as a paka financial wali person. So, but I don't know. And I remember some people saying, "Oh, is that appropriate if they're eating meat or what to speak?" You said onions and garlic. What to speak if they're eating meat and they have tulsi? And then other people said, "No, but they have tulsi. It's auspicious." So I'm not an authority on that one. I'm not an authority on that one. Rasika Ratika Mataji. If we say anything to a devotee for their good, but what if he or she gets offended, and will it affect our spiritual life? We should try to address it if somebody is offended by us, even if we didn't mean it. There's an English saying that the road to hell is paved by good intentions. So good intentions are super important, and also being able to communicate them is as important. So if we've hurt someone inadvertently, Krishna may forgive us, but generally what we want to do when we may not even find out at first, so then you can't do anything. You don't even know you offended them, right? Or they're upset. But once we do, it would be great if we can develop the ability to say, Prabhu, Mataji, can we sit down and talk about this? I certainly didn't want to hurt you. I want to explain what my intention was, like that. But, there is that story, I think many of you know, about Rupa Goswami was deep in meditation, and he started envisioning a pastime of Krishna's that was kind of funny, and he started externally chuckling, laughing, and just as he was doing that, a sadhu walked by who had some his body was deformed. And he thought that Rupa Goswami was laughing at him. And then the story goes that Rupa Goswami's meditation broke due to that Vaishnava taking offense. Now, I haven't heard Prabhupada tell that story, but at least the principle is there, that when we do become cognizant that a devotee is not happy with us, we should see if there's a way to smooth it over. But what do they say in North India? Put some makhan, right? Murari Madhava Prabhu says, Sri Vaishnavas and Madhva Parampara devotees mark tilak on different parts of the body with different materials. Why do we have differences in marking tilak, which is supposed to be based on scripture? Are there any days, occasions, or situations we should not wear tilak? I used to always think that, Krishna, especially living in the West, thank you that I became a Gaudiya, because I can imagine, this is enough for people to deal with. Could you imagine if your whole face is yellow here and red, and some of the markings of the Sri Vaishnavas or the Madhvas, whoa, that would be really hard for people to swallow in the West. There's different sampradayas. We know that for example, Ramanujacharya didn't put so much emphasis on Srimad Bhagavatam. You're all from South India. You know this better than me. So there's differences. But at the same time, we know that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, you can go there in Mayapur, and you see their temple with the 4 sampradayas being respected. So there's some, variety is the spice of life. And our tilak, has a very broad, this the part of the nose is in the shape of a tulasi. So that's very Vrindavan mood to it, right? So yeah, there's going to be differences, and generally we follow, the sampradaya that we're initiated into. Are there days, occasions, situations we should not wear tilak? No, unless, like we were just talking with Rasa Sindhu Prabhu, if there's times when, you're really in a place that people might wonder, why is a Vaishnava going into there? Like, meeting a business associate at a bar or something like that. So that might be better to put on water tilak. And like that. But there's no every Tuesday you shouldn't wear tilak, or, on Purnima you shouldn't wear, there's nothing that I'm familiar with. Certainly in Prabhupada's teachings, there's nothing like that. And yeah, Prabhupada used to put on his tilak. Yeah, I don't, and there's different, little details that, I don't think you're supposed to use your fingernail to clean the middle part as you're applying it to your body, right? And generally these are small things, but generally better to make the tilak in a ball in your hand instead of having it like in a cup and just dig it into the cup every time. These are not super important things, but people benefit by seeing us with tilak. That's also said. Okay, I think that we addressed everything, so let's move on. We're definitely not going to get through this whole chapter. But these, you have important questions, and these are important topics. I asked Achyuta Prabhu and Rasindhu Prabhu, are we going too fast, too slow? I said, should I speed up? And they said, no, devotees like to ask questions. So I'm taking their advice. Accepting flower garlands. Prabhupada writes, the purport of this verse is that for any person who simply follows these rules and regulations of decorating the body with the marks of tilak and gopi chandan or sandalwood pulp, and who puts on the garlands which were offered to Krishna, there is no question of being conquered by the spell of material energy. So, and And one thing I noticed, I'm sure you've all seen this in India, like you go to a function, and especially if they're not devotees, right? You garland the guest speaker or the politician, and what does he or she do within about 10 seconds? That's right, Pranav Vallabha, he takes it off, and I'm always like, God, we this is Mahaprashadam, so we shouldn't do that, we should, we don't have to, go to sleep with the garland around us, but we should honor, they're not, and lots of times at functions, especially non-ISKCON functions, they just bought it at some shop and then put it around the person. But if we know it's Mahaprashadam, we should feel so fortunate, not just like put it on, take it off, no, we want to, touch it to our head and smell it and thank Krishna so much that right? This story of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and getting the garland of Jagannath in Puri that time, right? And even once told Bhurijan Prabhu that Bhurijan Prabhu got a Maha garland from Prabhupada, and Prabhupada, he's just staying in Hong Kong for a few days. Prabhupada said, you can eat one flower per day. So they're very, very special. They've been around the body of the Lord. This is no joke. I felt so good today. We just had our Bhumi Puja here. And so I got one of the garlands that was around the coconut that is, transformed into the Lord. And so it wasn't, because it's just around a coconut, it wasn't like a fancy, because it wasn't a big garland. So it looked kind of scrawny, but I was so happy to have that around my neck. Yeah. So yeah, at least for us, if you're at a big function and they give you a Mahaprashadam garland, just keep wearing it. Even if everyone else takes it off, just keep wearing it. Or give it, and one of the beautiful things is to give it to someone else. What is funny is, because I lived in India for 21 years, I know this, but not all the Western devotees. Sometimes, a male devotee will give a female devotee a garland. No. Don't do that, Prabhu. That's only when you get married. Or sometimes I joke with them, okay, now you have to marry her. Something like that. But always get if you're a male and you have a garland for a Mataji, find another Mataji to garland her. That would be appropriate. Like that, or the husband, not the, at least the husband, or vice versa, the wife to the husband. Anything on flower garlands?
Shri Prabhu, I have one point here. Fortunately, I was in Vrindavan earlier this week, and in one of the temples, I got a garland of tulsi, which was offered to the Lord Yuan. Of course, I didn't wear the tulsi garland. I don't know if we should wear or should not wear a tulsi garland.
I'm not sure about that. I have seen devotees do it in Vrindavan, because in Vrindavan sometimes they offer these huge, beautiful tulsi garlands to the deities, to Radhe Shyam. And I've only rarely seen it, but you're really lucky if you still have that garland. You can take one tulsi every day.
Yes, I still have it.
And honor it. Yeah, I'm very fortunate. Yeah. And there's even things about, these are all details, but there are things about you're not supposed to chew tulsi, right? You just kind of let it, naturally disintegrate in your mouth, things like that. And usually we don't use tulsi for medicinal purposes, as a general rule. Yeah, even though it's, in one sense you'd say that sounds unfortunate, because I think she's very medicinal, but that's not her purpose. Yeah.
Thanks.
Anything else? Okay, let's carry on then. Bowing down in honor of the deity. And I never really, I mean, of course, we always do it, but then there was a time, I don't know if this is true in India also, but there was a time in America during COVID where they said, don't pay obeisances. Because remember, they weren't so sure about how it was spread. And so they thought it could be spread. If you pray Namo Vishnu Padaya, and then the other person's after you Namo Vishnu Padaya, and if you had COVID, right? So but it felt so weird. It felt so weird just to walk into the temple and keep standing. It was a strange feeling not to do that. So as a general rule, we we of course desire to bow down. Yeah. And then standing up to receive the Lord. So after bowing down, standing up, or first you can stand up and then bow down. It's just like if an elder walks into the room, right, or a senior person, even if they're not a devotee, let's say a high court judge walks into the room, people will stand up, right? That's, so what to speak of Krishna. Yeah. So personally, and I don't know if this is in any shastra, I stand up, then pay obeisances, then I stand up again. Let's say, it's Rath Yatra, and then follow. And that's the next one, is following the deity. So that is a principle. If you're in Mayapur, when they're having the elephant procession on Saturdays, the actual shastric thing to do is to follow the procession, not just like Hare Krishna, then go to Govinda's and buy some pizza. It's usually recommended to follow the procession. And of course, we do that in Rath Yatra. I don't know what your Rath Yatras are like. Before pre-COVID, that the one in Delhi was like 10 hours. It was so long. Hare Krishna. Going to the temple of Vishnu or places of pilgrimage. So, by the way, these are, there's a lot in this chapter about deity worship, right? Directly or indirectly. Oh, I missed one, by the way. But a lot of them are connected to the deities, right? So dancing, Prabhupada writes, in the same book, there is a statement by Narada wherein he asserts, from the body of any person who claps and dances before the deity, showing manifestations of ecstasy, all the birds of sinful activities fly away upward. So there's so much benefit. And I don't know, you tell me, in other sampradayas, is dancing as emphasized as in the Gaudiya Sampradaya? Achyuta, you're nodding your head.
No, Prabhu. It's very typical to ISKCON.
Yeah, well, to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Yeah. But isn't it, don't you, if the kirtan's going nicely, don't you have some like inspiration in the heart to start, you start swaying, and then if it's really an amazing thing, you may start, jumping up a little bit, it's the heart starts flying like a bird. Right. And it's been so hard without, just to hear kirtans over the internet for the last year and a half. It's been a real challenge. But this is very much in our sampradaya. Lord, Prabhupada taught us the Swami step. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, even if you look at the old movies of, what is it called? Neelachala Mahaprabhu or something like that old movie, and you see Lord Chaitanya's dancing. We had, I don't think I have pictures of it here on this computer, but we had, we had a Shobha Yatra for the Bhumi Puja. And so we put all the deities on palanquins. And at one point, the devotee in charge, he's from South India, and he was teaching us how to, the palanquin holders to sway. And so the deities were like dancing on the palanquin. They were put on very securely, and they were dancing. So even Krishna dances. And of course, we know Krishna dances Rasa Leela. Yeah. Whoops, somebody had their hand up for a second and then just took it down.
Hare Krishna,
Yes.
Hare
Oh yeah, Murari Madhava had his hand up, right?
Prabhu, regarding this dancing, it is there in Sri Vaishnava Parampara. Actually, once His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj took more than 5,000 devotees for yatra to Sri Rangam, and the Acharya there, actually, he was very happy to see devotees dancing, and he mentioned that actually ISKCON devotees are the real followers of Andal. Andal is one of the female saints of Sri Vaishnava Parampara. And actually, in her songs, actually, she describes how a devotee has to dance in front of Lord. That is exactly like ISKCON devotees, what they like, how they dance in front of deities. And looking to this, actually, Acharya there, Sri Vaishnava Acharya mentioned that you are all actually followers of Andal, and you are actually doing what actually Andal has said to do, actually.
How nice. How nice. Very nice. Thank you. Sham Kun Prabhu.
Just in the same vein as Murari Madhav Prabhu, around the time of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in South India, there was this movement of the Dasas, like Purandara Dasa, Kanaka Dasa, etc., who were followers of various Vaishnava Acharyas. And due to the influence of their songs, even to this date, there is the notion of singing, like especially men going around in circles around a lamp or around Tulsi Devi, or women separately. Like, but the dancing is done separately. But that's
of course. Yeah, even in ISKCON, the men and women don't dance together. Right. Yes, thank you. Navadvip Sachi Mataji.
Yes, Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavats Pranam. Actually, there was a Sri Sampradaya devotee who is now a devotee in ISKCON. And he's written a beautiful book about how various alvars talked about how in the future they see devotees dancing in the street, how they're dancing, jumping high, where their legs are touching their backs, etc. So the alvars had predicted that in the future there will be devotees doing Nama Sankirtan on the street, dancing. So a precursor of ISKCON. So yes, the alvars also very much talked about dancing in ecstasy for the Lord.
It's funny. When I was growing up, there was a song. It's not a devotional song at all, but it was called "Dancing in the Street," and it was about just how free it is to dance in the street. And I remember before I was a devotee, I said, "Oh, I wish I could do that one day." And then a few years later, there I was with saffron clothes on and dancing in the street. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so let's carry on. So that was dancing before the Lord, bowing down in honor of the Lord. We talked about that, standing up. So this is all about deity worship, following the deity, going to the temple. So we have our own Rasa Sindhu Giridhari Prabhu, who just followed this instruction, and he went to Vrindavan. And going to holy places is such a wonderful thing. And when we go, we should really plan our time there to have the greatest benefit. Prabhupada called it recharging our batteries. So not just spend all the time in Loy Bazaar, but getting a good association and visiting the holy places. And Prabhupada worked so hard to develop temples, especially in Mayapur and in Vrindavan. It wasn't easy. Neither of those places were easy. But because he wanted his disciples to get the benefit of being in the holy places. And of course, he himself relished Vrindavan and chose to leave this world in Vrindavan. So then circumambulating the temple of Vishnu. Let me see if there's any quotes that I wanted to say. About dancing, Prabhupada wrote in 1976, "I am here in your temple. I'm feeling your separation, but I'm seeing everything is going nicely, the same as when it was under your management. the devotees here, they are jumping and dancing very nicely. Jumping and dancing very nicely. Prabhupada noted that. So the next one, circumambulating the temple of Vishnu. Now, most, I'm pretty sure most ISKCON temples that were built as temples have some kind of prikrama marg, prikram path that you can easily circumambulate. There's some places, some smaller places like in Delhi that are just houses that have been turned into temples, and so they might not have a prikram marg per se. But being able to circumambulate the temple is very nice. But then Prabhupada was so practical. So there's one here. So this kirtan, evening artik, and circumambulating, if possible, you can circumambulate around the temple so that others may see also what they are doing. So like Nagar Sankirtan. If not, within the temple, you can circumambulate. So obviously circumambulating within the temple is not real circumambulate. You can't maybe not actually go around the deities. But Prabhupada was so practical. If you can't do that, the alpaca thing, you can still do something. And other quotes about circumambulating. Sri Sutta Goswami said, hearing this from the personality of Godhead, Arjuna touched water for purification. And after circumambulating Lord Shri Krishna, he cast his Brahmastra weapon to counteract the other one. So that's a way of worshiping. And then in Chaitanya Charitamrita, after circumambulating the tomb of Haridas Thakur, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to the Simhadwara gate of the Jagannath temple. The whole city chanted in congregation, and the tumultuous sound vibrated all over the city. So he circumambulated the Samadhi of Haridas Thakur. I remember being in Puri and circumambulating the temple because, of course, I'm not allowed to go inside. One way of worshiping, of showing respect to a cow, is to circumambulate her. There's three things: to rub her under her neck. This is, I think, Jiva Goswami, and to offer some fresh grass, and to circumambulate. So it's a way of showing respect. So that's why I generally, let me just hold on just 1 second. Who's just 1 second. Okay. So it is a way of, it's a way of showing respect to the deities, respect. And generally you'll see that we, I don't know if this was Prabhupada's plan, but we worship Tulsi Devi after the temple doors are closed, because generally you don't circumambulate anyone else in front of Krishna, because, and then we do circumambulation and prikrama of Tulsi Devi. But I'm not sure if that was planned that way, but it kind of makes sense theologically, as it were. And just hold on one more. The reason I'm just getting a text message from my Guru Maharaj and just seeing maybe he changed his mind and he'll come to our class for a minute. That's why I'm just, hold on 1 second.
Wow.
No, he's making another point. So any questions, comments on circumambulation?
So is there a designated number of times one has to circumambulate the temple?
Thank you for that question. And let me see if I did see something. I believe it would, Prabhupada mentioned 4. Let me just check that on database real quick.
It is mentioned
The same
here.
paragraph is there, Prabhu.
Oh, is it in the book itself?
It
Yeah,
is in the
second paragraph.
Ah, thank you.
Kanda Purana.
Okay, there you go. Yes, at least 4. And Prabhupada here says at least. I knew I read it somewhere. At least 4 times. Okay? That answer your question?
Hare
Yes.
Krishna Prabhu.
Yes.
Is there any significance to that number, Prabhu? Or sometimes we hear 3 times, sometimes 4 times. Is there any significance?
I don't know. The main thing is the main thing again is to have the right pav, right? You know, Krishna is called Pava Grahi Janardhan, the one who takes the essence of one's spiritual sentiments. So remember, all of these things we're covering, they are kinkaras, they're servants of the principle. So if we get like, it's just like, when you're offering artik, okay, 4 to the feet, 2 to the body, 3 to the head, 7 around. What was that? 6? Was it 8? Oh my God. And there's no bhakti. It just becomes, math class. That's not the idea, right? I mean, we should do things, in a pucka way because we're not spontaneous. We're not on the Raganuga platform yet. But at the same time, the essence is the heart. But I'm not sure, it's just like, and there's all these things, you don't know sometimes if things actually, or at least I don't know sometimes, if things are actually a Gaudiya Vaishnava detail, or just something that's kind of Hindu, who knows where it came from kind of thing, right? It's just like I remember in Vrindavan sometimes serving someone chapatis. And if I gave them 3 chapatis, they say, oh, then you're my enemy. Ever heard that one? That 3, if you give someone 3 of something, it's an enemy. Rasa Sindhu Prabhu has heard of that. Yeah. And
Yes, Prabhu, I've heard of that.
yeah.
So the normally they're giving 3, they almost they take a small piece of it and remove it aside, so they're giving little less than 3.
Oh, that's a good. I'll have to remember that. So I don't know if it's kind of like the story of the cat in the basket, right? No. Yes. Maybe.
No problem. No.
Well, Prabhupada tells a story that there was a wedding, and it was going on nicely, and then there was a cat running around the wedding and disturbing things. So somebody caught the cat and said, "Oh, put it in the basket," right? And so they put it in the basket. Then some people went to that wedding, went to the next wedding, and the wedding was going on. They said, wait a second, where's the cat in the basket? We need a cat in the basket. It's part of the wedding program. So I never know, which things are actually kind of pucka and which things are cat in the basket. My dear friend, Bhima Prabhu, he's married to Srila Prabhupada's niece. Maybe some of you know. And so, she knows all of these little Bengali things, right? So like if you sneeze when you're leaving the house, Bhima Prabhu's from America, and he sneeze, and she would say, "Oh, Prabhu, you have to go back inside and chant at least 3 Hare Krishna mantras, then you can leave again." So I don't know, but I do know that based on that verse, that these are all kinkaras, servants of the principle. Has anyone else heard that sneeze one? If you sneeze when you're leaving the house, yes,
Yes,
no.
heard of it enough times.
Yes,
Right.
Prabhuji, North India, it's quite prevalent. The moment somebody sneezes, don't go out now. Stay back.
We had all kinds of things, like
Cat should not come in the way.
clipping nails invites thieves. Have you ever heard that one? The nail clippings. Anyway, there's all kinds of things that were going around ISKCON in the earlier days, and some of them I'm sure came from Srila Prabhupada, and some of them, who knows. But if you want to get into details, there's plenty. There's 64 of them in Nectar of Devotion. So the next one is Archana, is actual deity worship, and that, of course, is wonderful. And Prabhupada tells a story here about in the Sudama, and how Sudama was an intimate friend of Krishna, and while going to the house of a Brahmana, he murmured to himself, simply by worshiping Krishna, one can easily achieve all the results of heavenly opulence, liberation, supremacy over the planetary systems of the universe, all the opulences of this material world, and the mystic power of performing the yoga system. So deity worship is one of the 5 most potent items of bhakti. So it'll be repeated again in the 13th chapter. And the trick is, here's a kind of a ISKCON quandary. In the old days, so Burijan Prabhu's wife, Jagatrini Mataji, she had a Laddu Gopal, very Gujarati kind of thing, right? Laddu Gopal that she was worshiping. And this is the early days of ISKCON, right? Early days. There was no congregation in the early days. So Prabhupada said there should not be 2 centers, right? In other words, just worship, focus on the deity in the temple, the main deities in the temple. Someone's not on mute.
But I don't think so.
Should we find out who it is? No, we're not going to call them out, but I was muted also. But now we have a congregation. Congregation members may not live, across the street from the temple, and therefore, be able to just focus on the worship of the main temple deity. So then we take to worship at home, and that's nice to, but if we live very close to the temple, and especially if we're initiated and we're a Brahmana, maybe we can do direct service to the main deity. And that's of course very nice. That's possible. But deity worship is Prabhupada would sometimes say it's very helpful for the neophyte. Sometimes it said it's very helpful for the grihasta. Because it's a personal, you start dealing with the deity in a very personal way. It's like in my house. We're both busy. My wife is very busy, and I'm very busy. But maybe of the 2 of us, she does all the deity worship. She does all the deity worship, and we have a Govardhan Shila. So, but when you have deities, you have to treat. It's almost like when you have children, you can't just like neglect them and say, well, we'll feed you tomorrow. You can't do that with your child, and you can't do that with the deity. So even if we come back from a program, she's totally exhausted, she has to take bath, put on fresh tilak, and then put the Lord to rest. Like that. So it's very, you start developing this mood that I'm dealing with a person, and that's the essence. Not if it's 4 times around, 2 7 times, all that. Those are we follow those, but they're not the essence. So rendering service to the Lord, and just yes, we should. We're Krishna's eternal servants, so we should be serving him. And Prabhupada says that one way you can do it is in the very much the Vaidhi mood, that the deity is worshipped just like a king. In other words, you're dealing with a person, and you worship him as such. And then there's singing and sankirtan. The reason they're separate is sankirtan can be, as Prabhupada writes in the beginning of that it can be about Krishna's name, but also his activities, his qualities, and his form. And so sankirtan, at least by Rupa Goswami, labels things in that way. And of course, singing is kirtan. And what a wonderful way to worship God, by singing. Singing such a blissful thing to do, even for non-devotees. They'll walk around singing the latest tune in their head, or when they really feel that they're in anxiety, they'll listen to some music. So what to speak of singing songs about Krishna? And we're very fortunate in the Gaudiya Sampradaya that we have these beautiful songs by Narottama Das Thakur, beautiful songs by Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, just so deep and so wonderful. I was just listening to Amara Jivana, Bhakti Vinod Thakur's song about how fallen he feels himself. And Narottama Das Thakur, Prabhupada mentions that they're written in simple Bengali, but they're as good as any Vedic, they're greater than any Vedic hymn. Because they're just filled with this bhav. I don't know if any of you have read Sitala Mataji's book on Narottama Das Thakur. It's a beautiful book. Such a nice book about Narottama Das Thakur. So we're lucky that we can sing, and then sometimes if you're by yourself in your house and maybe you're cleaning or something like that and nobody else around, you can put on a kirtan and sing along with the kirtan as loud as you want. Nobody else is watching you or listening to you, and you can enter into a really blissful mood. So singing and singing also can be, like we said, reciting the qualities, the pastimes of the Lord. So any questions on any of those points that we've just brought up? No? Okay. Let us continue then. Japa. Well, what can we say? Japa is true meditation. People are so fond of, I don't know. Yeah, I think in India, they have different meditations that people do, and but the japa, because abhinapam namanam, it's directly Krishna, and it's not easy, but if we try every day to really focus on the one mantra that we're chanting at a time, it's and understand that Krishna is so pleased with someone who's trying to chant his names attentively. He's so pleased, and he just says, "Oh, finally, this devotee is turning to me. How wonderful!" So japa is, in some ways, one of the greatest challenges and one of the greatest benefits that given to us by the spiritual master. But it is, it's because, meaning the fact that we give full attention to the holy name means we're really cutting away at our false ego, and our false ego doesn't like that. False ego says, whoa, wait a second. We're the center of attention, not Krishna. If you focus too much on Krishna's name, what's going to happen to me? The false ego says. For so many lifetimes, we've been doing very well in total illusion. And now you want to change everything and focus on Krishna's name, and you know what that's going to do? You're going to become happy, and I'm going to become miserable, the false ego says. So it really is coming to grips with our relationship with Krishna in our japa. And if at all possible, we try to make whatever, if you're initiated, those 2 hours or however long it takes, the best time of the day, the highest priority, like that. I think I put I think I put this. Seems like there's something wrong with his website right now. Oh, interesting. Anyway, he has a nice little book. Maybe you've seen it on japa affirmations. Just like, little things that can help us, getting the right mentality. I love to chant my japa, things like that. And I set aside everything else to chant my japa. It's such a benediction that Krishna's holy name has come to us in this form. And that we can chant every day Krishna's name. Yeah. Any questions or comments on japa? Okay. Now, submission. So submission is one, and then the next one is reciting notable prayers. So in submission, there's different levels. And the level that Prabhupada is talking about here in Srila Rupa Goswami is actually very, very exalted. Lalasamayi, desiring some perfectional stage, means desiring prema bhakti. So Prabhupada writes, when one realizes something of his constitutional relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he understands his original position and wants to be reinstated in this position, either as, and so it's very much intimate, right? As friend, servant, parent, or conjugal lover of Krishna. That is called Lalasamayi, or very eagerly desiring to go to one's natural position. This Lalasamayi stage of submission comes in the stage of perfect liberation, which is technically called Swarup Siddhi. When the living entity understands by perfect spiritual advancement and revelation his original relationship with the Lord. So then a little later, Prabhupada writes, as far as the conditioned soul is concerned, there's no wonder that he has some sinful activities in his past life, and this should be admitted and confessed before the Lord. As soon as this is done, the Lord excuses the sincere devotee. But that does not mean that one should take advantage of the Lord's causeless mercy and expect to be excused over and over again while he commits the same sinful activities. So, and then finally, one of the most powerful paragraphs in the whole book is at the end of this section. In other words, one should learn how to cry for the Lord. One should learn this small technique, and he should be very eager and actually cry to become engaged in some particular type of service. This is called loyam, and such tears are the price for the highest perfection. If one develops this loyam, or excessive eagerness for meeting and serving the Lord in a particular way, that is the price to enter into the kingdom of God. Otherwise, there is no material calculation for the value of the ticket by which one can enter the kingdom of God. The only price for such entrance is this loyam, lalasamayi, or desire and great eagerness. So how many of us are going through the motions of devotional service, Hare Krishna, reading some Bhagavatam, but do we really have this greed, this really, I want to become Krishna's servant, please accept me, please Krishna accept me. That strength of desire is often lacking in us by the influence of the three modes of material nature. But as Prabhupada says here, as hard as it is, that's the price to pay. That's the price to pay. One should learn this small technique, and he should be very eager and actually try to become engaged in some particular type of service. So as much as this is an exalted section, this is kind of saying that you can make up your own prayers for the Lord, to the Lord. And that's nice. And then the next section, reciting notable prayers, is you can also recite prayers of other great devotees, like Prabhupada mentions the 11th chapter, Arjuna's prayers to the universal form, and many places in the Srimad Bhagavatam. For example, Prabhupada says, Canto 5, chapter 18, verse 8 is the mantra you can chant to give up material desires. And then there's Queen Kunti's beautiful prayers. There's Bhishma Dev's beautiful prayers while lying on the bed of arrows. There's so many, Vritrasura, so many. Prabhupada writes that again in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are hundreds of prayers to the Lord. So a devotee should select some of these prayers for recitation. And of course, we have the most potent prayers, the Shikshastakam. Right? So we should find some time on a daily basis to offer Krishna some prayers. So we covered a few points. Questions, comments on any of these?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes.
Prabhu, if we are following most of the all the regulative principles and we do a deity worship also, so is it not okay to consider that we already are a servant of Krishna and we are doing our service according to?
Sure, of course. It's good that we are following the rules and regulations. And we should do it with love.
Yes.
That's the point. So we should do externally those things, and internally we're really trying to say, oh, Krishna, I'm so fallen. Please accept me. Please allow me to do some service. Please let me do this service that's pleasing to you, and really trying to enter into that mood. So it's not just doing service, because you can do your service and completely think you're in master mentality. But doing your service in a service, I probably like this word, service attitude. In one place, he says it's not so much the service that you're offering, it's a service attitude. Well, even if you're a multi-billionaire and you build a new temple for Krishna with 110 crores, whatever, right? Krishna owns all the money. He doesn't need your 110 crores, right? So it's okay to give 110 crores for a temple, but you should also, oh, Krishna, please accept this. This is my humble offering to you. I don't want anything in return. I'm just giving this. I don't want to be treated like some, demigod. I just want to be one of the regular devotees. Ambarish Prabhu is very much like that. He's so wealthy. He's from such a famous family, the Ford family. And you would never, if you didn't know who he was in a kirtan, you had no idea that he's Henry Ford's great-grandson. He's just chanting with everybody else and taking the humble position. Yeah. So, did that answer your question?
Okay. Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there a condition while chanting mantras, prayers, etc., i.e. pronunciation? Well, we should try to chant. We should try to, Prabhupada mentions, where is that? We shouldn't chant like we're creating a hissing sound. We should chant so that we can hear the holy name. And we should chant, yes, there are conditions. The main condition is given by Lord Chaitanya in the third verse, Trinad api sunichena taror api sahishuna amani namana dena kirtaniya satari. That one should chant the holy name in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and ready to offer all respects to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. So that's one of the conditions, is to chant. Besides that, we are generally instructed to chant the Panchatattva Maha Mantra before chanting japa. When I first joined in the 70s, we'd always chant after every month, every round. I now, for some reason, I do it every 4 rounds. When I chant 4 rounds, I say Jai Shri Krishna. I don't do that every round. But in the early days, that's what I would do. Yeah, so we should chant with devotion primarily. Yeah, I hope that's helpful. Anything else?
Prabhu, regarding the service attitude, what is the right service attitude? That desire to do a particular service, capability of rendering a particular service, or executing a service allocated to you by the temple authorities?
Well, generally, the ideal situation, Prabhu, is the temple authorities really try to understand the psychophysical nature of the devotee and engage them accordingly. And the devotee just says, how can I serve? Wants to surrender. So that combination of looking after the devotee's welfare and wanting to just, Krishna, I'm yours, that's a great combination. If that can be there, that's ideal. Prabhupada
Sure.
Prabhupada said something really amazing, and you should please listen to this. He was telling devotee leaders, never treat the devotees like hired help, and never treat the hired help like devotees.
Can you repeat that, please?
Never treat the devotees like hired help, and never treat the hired help like devotees. Which may be a Western thing. I remember one time in Vrindavan, a devotee came from the West, and he thought he was like doing, Brijbasi Seva. So he rode the rickshaw, and the rickshaw driver was in the back like this, just going. And then at the end, he probably gave him 3 times as much rupees as you're supposed to give for the trip to Loy Bazaar. So they're not exactly hired help, but you get the idea. You don't want to treat them like that. They're getting paid and they have a job to do. And don't treat the devotees who've given up everything and are really trying to develop their bhakti. Don't treat them just like, you can boss them around unnecessarily.
Sure.
Okay. Anything else? All right, let's see, where are we? Taking prasadam, it's a good idea to take prasadam. A person who honors the prasad and regularly eats it, not exactly in front of the deity. So yeah, we generally don't eat a plate of prasadam in front of the deity. It is, however, okay to take mahaprasadam in front of the deity. But you don't sit down with a whole plate of prasadam and a big feast and a mountain of rice and all that in front of the deities, and you say, you don't do that in front of the deities. In the old days in Vrindavan, we would serve feasts in the temple room and in the courtyard, but that was also not. It was after the curtains were closed. But we should honor prasadam, not just shovel it into our mouth. And we can say the prayer very devotionally, Sharira Avijajal. We can say that with great devotion and appreciation and gratitude. Really, one of the main parts of taking prasadam is to feel some gratitude towards Krishna for providing it. Yeah. So I one dilemma I've had, which I've worked out now, is, my doctor tells me not to eat too many fried things and not too much this and that. But during the pandemic, I've been going to the temple a lot for lunch, for Vraj Boga. And that could mean lots of fried things and, lots of sweets and things like that. So recently I take the rice and the dal and maybe one of the sabjis, bas. So in other words, my point is, I want to take mahaprasadam because it says in the Shastra that that's what we should do. So I'm not going to not take it because of my health, but I also have my health concerns. So I found a balance like that. Taking mahaprasadam, just particular kinds. I mean, that in some ways that, if somebody offers you mahaprasad, you just say, whatever you give me, Prabhu, is fine. That's actually the idea. And not say, I want the Karela, but I don't want the Loki. You know, you don't want to do that with Mahaprasadam. Mahaprasadam, just take it. That's why in the old days, sometimes we would take all the Mahaprasadam and mix it all up into one big khichdi. You can imagine what that was like, and give that out to devotees just so that they wouldn't say, oh, I like this, I don't like it. I'm not saying we should do that. I don't know if it was a bona fide idea or a good idea, but and especially because a lot of you aren't living right near the temple. So when you do go to the temple and you do get a chance to get some Mahaprasadam, definitely take advantage of it. It's such an important part of our lives as devotees.
While honoring prasadam, sometimes in temple you might get a whole fruit from Mahaprasad. And when you start biting or take a piece of the fruit, you see it's either rotten inside or what do we do?
Kya kare? We take whatever we can eat of it. Usually it's not the whole fruit. And then hopefully the temple has some kind of like sacred throwaway, you know, a way of dealing with it respectfully. In the old days, we would throw it into the river, but that's not, it helps the river, but it may not help the, you know, the environment. Or offer it to lower animals, you know, things like that. It shouldn't go totally to waste if we can avoid that, or make it, you know, it can also be composted, and it can become very fertile, the composting, and, you know, used in growing more plants and flowers and fruits and vegetables for Krishna next year. Of course, in India, you have the opulence of a year-round growing time. In America, you know, it's too cold. Many parts of America, at least 4 or 5 months a year, it's way too cold to grow anything.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's our time for today. So next week, why don't we do this? Why don't we finish this chapter and do the 10 offenses? Is that okay?
Sure.
So thank you very much for your association, Prabhus and Matajis. And we will have a very, very wonderful Janmastami, have a very, very wonderful Vyasa Puja of Srila Prabhupada's 125th. And we will see you all experiencing the remnants of that bliss next Friday. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Panchakalpatarubhyasya kripa sindhubhyevacha patithanam
Yo Vaishnavebhyo namo namo. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. There are no specific announcements this week as well. We are still working with the Mayapur Academy, Mayapur Institute of Higher Education on the exam format and other, because we need to still bring some alignment between Mayapur's curriculum and the way our Bhakti Shastri program has been going under Washington's structure. And Padmanabhan Prabhu said, I think after the festival, after Janmashtami and Vyas Puja, he'll give us some time, have a discussion along with Vardha Krishna Prabhu and other team leaders as to how the complete alignment can happen. So it looks like, you know, the exam of NOI and NOD as well is going to be a little ahead of maybe a few more weeks ahead for us. So until then, I don't think we have any more updates on that front yet. So
Prabhuji, may I request that the rest of the homework for NOD be released, because there is a huge backlog now.